Hi friend, do you ever feel like standard leadership advice just doesn't work for you? Well, welcome to Leadership from Within. In this podcast, we will discover your unique leadership style. We dive into the world of MBTI and Big Five. We shape leadership strategies that truly fit you. Join us on this journey to find out the one-of-a-kind leader you are. Let's get started. In this second segment of our interview, I began by asking Dr. Kumar about his journey to becoming a marketing expert.
As an academic, you are shaped by the institutions that you went to school at and also the institutions that you taught at. And for me, these institutions are critical to who I am today. They are basically I today am a summation of what I've learned at these institutions and with the colleagues who were there at these institutions, who were some of the smartest people in the world. So, for example, at Kellogg, where I met my good friend Philip Kotler, who was the god of marketing, what I learned from Philip Kotler and what I learned at Northwestern from that marketing department, which was number one at the time when I did my PhD there, was that excellence is not compromisable. And basically, the excellence that they had on academic research, the excellence that they had on practice research, and the excellence that they had on helping companies become better was something that has stayed with me for the rest of my career. And it was there also where I learned, I think one of the biggest challenges we face in life is the poverty of aspirations, where people don't, dream big enough. And Kellogg, because of the kinds of people they had in the marketing department, they made me dream big about how you can, as an academic, not only be an academic that produces new ideas for academic world, but also produces principles, frameworks, and practices that will change the business world. When I went to IMD, it was different. At IMD, a transformation took place for me because they were concentrating on executive education for the most senior level. Because I was thrown at a relatively young age in the front of CEOs of major corporations in the world, what that taught me was to change from being just a professor of marketing to a professor of strategy. Because for CEOs, they don't see, like in academic institutions, finance, marketing, strategy in different boxes. They take a holistic perspective. And that's what I learned at IMD. I got transformed from being a professor of marketing to becoming a professor of business. And that had stood me in great stead when later in my career, I joined boards of directors as well as became a consultant to maybe 300 to 400 different CEOs.
A mature and experienced ESTJ like Dr. Kumar has the ability to a more balanced use of sensing and intuition, allowing them to effectively engage in both detailed tactical thinking and big picture strategic thinking. In this next part, you'll find out how mixing tactical thinking, which comes from a place of practicality, with grand strategic mindset can really set you up for success in your organization.
So at a basic level, there is not really a very big difference between marketing and strategy when you talk at the business unit level. It's only at the corporate level where the differences become big. The problem with most marketing people, which is what I explicated in my first book, Marketing and Strategy, is that marketing people tend to go too quickly into the tacticals. How are we going to advertise? Where are we going to advertise? What are we going to advertise? Whereas marketing is really not about that. Marketing at a strategic level is about choosing which customers to serve, with what to serve them, the value proposition, and then how to deliver that value proposition to that customer in order to make money. So if you look at it from a strategic perspective, at the business unit level, marketing and strategy are the same. But when it comes to the corporate level strategy, of course, there are things in that which we do not discuss in marketing. So for example, acquisitions. What should the portfolio be? How should we, do the financial engineering? How shall we build competencies that go across companies? These are things that in marketing we would not consider, but they're central to developing the corporate strategy of a company. What is the dividend policy? How is it that we are going to, do share buybacks, acquisitions? These are all things that won't be in the purview of marketing. That will be more part of corporate strategy. In the end, the marketing has to be nested within the strategy for that product or service. The marketing has to be nested within what is the strategy for the company. To make a business and a firm really successful, what I've learned over the 30 years of my career is the best companies, they don't do X or Y. They do X and Y. They have a clear strategy that is articulated and executed through their finance, through their marketing, through their operations, through their HR. It means that the great firms don't say we will do strategy well and not marketing, or finance well and not HR well. The great companies, they make sure that all of these different functions are working in concert with each other, are interacting with each other to create a consolidated whole, that if any other company came and tried to copy only one aspect of this company, they will not get the same success.
Next, Dr. Kumar shared his approach to consulting and problem solving, highlighting its alignment with ESTJ leadership traits, such as a balanced mix of practicality, attention to detail, an analytical approach, and decisiveness.
So basically, you have to realize that most of the time when I'm doing consulting, I look at two things. First thing I look at is, what is the real problem? What managers tell me is the problem is usually the symptoms. It's like a doctor, if it's like a patient going into a doctor and saying, I have the flu. Well, you don't really have the flu. That is a symptom. What you have is something that is wrong with you, which is causing the flu. So what I usually do is, when managers tell me their problems, I first try to analyze this problem to get down to what is the real problem. How do we just separate the problem from the symptoms? Once I understand the problem, the solutions become more obvious. Secondly, what I realized over after 30 years of consulting is that most marketing problems in their core, when you dig deep enough, in the end turn out to be a segmentation problem. For example, the customers are not paying the prices that firm is asking for. Well, the reason they're not paying the prices for is maybe we are targeting the wrong segment, the segment that doesn't value the proposition we have relative to the price we pay. Right? In the end, it's all a segmentation problem. Maybe we have made a product which is an average for many segments, and then the price is, is based on having the features that will satisfy so many different segments rather than a single segment, and having a more precise and more focused and a stripped down version of a product which will only focus on one segment but will satisfy that segment at a lower price. So in the end, what I found that most marketing problems that came to me in the end were segmentation problems. And so you had to first figure out what is the real problem. Then you had to figure out, how does segmentation impact this problem? Is this really a, and most of the time it was a segmentation problem. But of course, when I got to non-marketing problems, that doesn't apply. And, in the end, it's about being analytical. It's about realizing that every problem has multiple solutions and trying to figure out what are the key moderators that will determine whether this solution will work or that solution will work. Once you figure out the key moderators which will determine whether this solution will work or that solution will work, then you see which of these moderators are operational in this situation, so that I know I chose the right solution.
Dr. Kumar also shared an example of his navigation through complex and uncertain business situations, where you may find indications of how he utilizes ESTJ strengths.
We do not appoint people on board of directors for their knowledge. I can hire a consultant for the knowledge. We hire people on the board of directors for their judgment. And judgment means making a decision in the face of uncertainty, in the face of incomplete information. Now, some of these problems are such problems that you can throw them into the long grass and say, okay, we'll deal with that in 2 months from now. In the meantime, you collect as much data and as much information and as much analysis you want to do. But there are other problems you have to solve today in the face of incomplete information, in the face of lack of analytical rigor, but the decision has to be made now. And in those situations, what does is your experience and your judgment comes into play. Yeah, those decisions can always be second guessed. But I always say in this kind of situation is, based on the information I had at that time, did I make the best decision? And that's what we try to do. We know that there could have been a better decision, but we just don't have the luxury of time. We just don't have the luxury of doing more analysis. We don't have the luxury of collecting more information. And in those gappy situations is where I require people with judgment to come and make a decision, knowing full well that this is the decision we are making, which we think is the best for the firm today. It may be that tomorrow, in hindsight, it may not look that great, but we got to go with it now.
Moving forward, Dr. Kumar gave us a glimpse into the systematic thought process of an ESTJ leader, skillfully breaking down complex problems into digestible parts. He laid out a clear structure strategy for handling a large and diverse group of companies. He categorized his strategies into three main areas: portfolio optimization, nurturing, and synergies.
At the Tata Group, there were like hundreds of companies, many different sectors, all very different from each other. So the first thing you think about as head of strategy is, how can we create value from the corporate center when all the companies have their own CEOs, they have their own board of directors, and they're in different businesses. And you realize that there's only three ways I can create value from the center. The first is portfolio optimization. I have this portfolio. What should be the portfolio look like in 10 years from today? What companies do I need to abandon? What companies do I need to start? What companies do I need to acquire? What companies do I need to merge? That is all about portfolio optimization to get better performance financially, as well as to have a more future-proof business for the group. That is the first thing. Second thing I can do from the corporate center is what I call nurturing. Nurturing is, how does this company that we own, because it belongs to the Tata Group, get an advantage? And for that, we did things like, we have a reputation so that if that company goes saying they come from the Tata Group, they get doors open for them, whether it's in the financial world, whether it's with banks, whether it's with governments, whether it's with bureaucrats, whether it's with what you call different kinds of stakeholders. And nurturing is also that we would nurture and we would develop the talent from a central repository so that no matter which company had a problem, we could have talent in waiting to go into that company. The third thing in which you create value from the center, besides portfolio optimization and nurturing, is synergies. Synergies is, this is something no other company can do because we have such a large portfolio. We can get our companies to work together to create something that which will be more than A plus B. And so the company A versus company B, we put them together to do a certain initiative, then suddenly we can get an outcome which neither company could have got on its own. And so the search for synergies was there. So we looked for these three things. My job in the 3.5 years I was there was portfolio optimization. That was the strategy big part. Second part was nurturing, making sure we are developing certain capabilities at the group level, which will nurture and parent each company better. And third was finding opportunities for two companies or small groups of companies to work together where they could come up with propositions and savings which they could not have done on their own.
Thanks for being with us today on Leadership from Within. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to empower your leadership journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe and share it with others. And remember, if you have any specific questions about leadership, we're just an email away. See you in the next one.